Her heels clicked too sharply, like a countdown to a lie. The scent of unfamiliar perfume, cheap lavender and something synthetic, clung to her as she slipped through the door at midnight. Andrew Clayton, 52, retired architect and devoted husband, stood in the dimly lit foyer of their Seattle suburban mansion, his jaw tight, his eyes tracing the woman who was no longer his. For 23 years, Andrew and Allison had been the couple everyone envied. Their home in Bellevue, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and manicured lawn, screamed success. Allison, a 49-year-old marketing executive, dazzled clients with her charm and sharp wit, while Andrew, once a visionary behind Seattle's skyline, now spent his days tending to their garden and mentoring young architects pro bono. To the outside world, they were perfect. But perfection, Andrew was learning, was just a well-polished facade. That Wednesday night, Allison's excuse was flimsy. Late meeting with the Thompsons about their rebranding campaign, she muttered, avoiding his gaze as she kicked off her heels. Her blouse clung to her back, damp with sweat, and her pupils were wide, too wide for a woman who'd spent hours in a boardroom. Andrew didn't buy it. The Thompsons, as far as he knew, had relocated to Arizona 6 months ago. He could have called her out, demanded answers, but he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he played the part of the oblivious husband, his voice calm, almost tender. "Long night?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen island, watching her like a hawk circling prey. Allison's response was a dismissive shrug, her fingers already dancing across her phone screen. That phone. It was her shadow now, always in her hand, always face down. She'd added a second layer of security last month, a fingerprint lock on top of a passcode. When Andrew had teased, "What, you hiding state secrets in there?" she'd snapped, "It's called privacy, Andrew," and stormed off, leaving a chill in the room. He hadn't pushed then, but the seed of doubt had taken root. The real fracture came on Saturday morning, in the cluttered chaos of their garage. Andrew, restless in retirement, decided to tackle the corner where old paint cans and tangled Christmas lights went to die. The air was thick with dust and mildew, a battlefield of forgotten projects. Amid the mess, he found a small, unassuming shoebox labeled Allison's Files. Curious, he pried it open, expecting tax forms or old receipts. Instead, he found a single item, a glossy receipt from Harper & Wells, a high-end jewelry boutique downtown. The receipt was for a $25,000 Patek Philippe watch, paid in full, delivered to a Nathan Wilson at an address in the Summit Towers, a luxury high-rise in Seattle's Belltown district. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable, Allison's sharp, slanted A. The same one she'd scrawled on their wedding guestbook 2 decades ago. Andrew's pulse quickened, not with anger, but with a cold, clinical clarity. Nathan Wilson wasn't a neighbor, a colleague, or a friend. He was a stranger, and Allison had signed for his $25,000 watch. He didn't confront her. That would have been too easy, too reckless. Andrew was a man of precision, trained to see structures where others saw chaos. He tucked the receipt into his pocket and spent the afternoon gardening, his mind mapping out the possibilities. Was it a gift for a client, a mistake, or something uglier? By evening, he'd decided. He needed answers, and he'd get them his way. Allison was out again that night, another client dinner that stretched past 10 p.m. Andrew sat in his study, a glass of bourbon untouched on the desk, and did what any architect would do. He started digging for the foundation of her lies. A quick search on his laptop revealed Nathan Wilson, a 45-year-old divorce attorney with a slick LinkedIn profile and a reputation for handling Seattle's messiest breakups. His photo showed a man with a gym-toned physique, whitened teeth, and the kind of confidence that screamed, "I've never been told no." Andrew's gut twisted, but he kept digging. He cross-referenced the Summit Towers address. Unit 1704, purchased 6 months ago for $640,000. No mortgage, paid through a shell company called Wilson Ventures. The transaction was clean, too clean, and Andrew knew Allison's fingerprints were on it. She'd always been meticulous with money, balancing their joint accounts with surgical precision. If she was involved, she'd left a trail somewhere. That night, as Allison slipped into bed, her phone buzzing with notifications she silenced without checking, Andrew lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't the jealous type, never had been. This wasn't about betrayal in the heart. It was about betrayal in the ledger. Allison wasn't just hiding a lover. She was hiding a plan. And Andrew, the man who'd once designed buildings to withstand earthquakes, wasn't about to let his life crumble without a fight. The next morning, he called an old friend, Marcus, a retired private investigator who owed Andrew a favor from their days navigating city permits. "I need you to tail someone," Andrew said, his voice steady. "Discreetly. And I need everything. Photos, locations, contacts." Marcus didn't ask questions. He just said, "Text me the name and address. I'll have something by Friday." As Andrew hung up, Allison breezed into the kitchen, her green smoothie in hand, her smile too bright. "You're up early," she said, glancing at him over the rim of her glass. "Just planning my day," he replied, matching her tone. She nodded, oblivious, and left for work, her Lexus humming out of the driveway. Andrew watched her go, his fingers brushing the receipt in his pocket. The game had begun, and Allison had no idea she was already losing. The truth didn't scream. It whispered, sharp and cold, like a blade sliding under skin. Andrew Clayton sat in his study, the receipt for a $25,000 watch burning a hole in his mind. Allison's lies were no longer just a suspicion. They were a blueprint, and he was about to dismantle it. By Thursday, Andrew's patience was a tightly coiled spring. Allison's late nights had become routine, each excuse flimsier than the last. "Client drinks at the Nest," she'd said last night, her voice breezy as she slipped into her coat. Andrew had nodded, playing the dutiful husband, but his eyes caught the flicker of her phone screen before she locked it. A notification from NW. Nathan Wilson. He didn't confront her. Confrontation was for amateurs. Andrew was building a case. His first move was Marcus, the private investigator. By Friday morning, Marcus delivered a manila envelope to Andrew's doorstep. No return address, just a post-it note. "Call me when you're ready." Inside were photos, grainy but damning. Allison and Nathan at a rooftop bar in Belltown, her hand on his arm, his smile too intimate for a business meeting. Another shot showed them entering Summit Towers, her head tilted back in laughter, his hand guiding her through the revolving doors. The timestamp, 11:47 p.m., 2 nights ago. Andrew's pulse stayed steady, but something inside him hardened, like concrete setting under pressure. The photos weren't enough. Andrew needed proof not just of an affair, but of the larger game Allison was playing. He knew her too well. She wasn't the type to risk everything for a fling. This was calculated, strategic, and it involved money. Their money. His money. The receipt for the watch was a clue, but the Summit Towers purchase, a $640,000 condo paid through a shell company, smelled like a conspiracy. Andrew's next step was riskier. Allison's Lexus, her prized possession, was more than a car. It was her war chariot, always pristine, always blasting her motivational podcasts about manifesting wealth. He waited until Saturday, when she was out for a brunch meeting. She'd kissed his cheek. 3 seconds, no eye contact, her new standard, and left. Andrew didn't waste time. He'd told her he was upgrading the car's audio system, even showed her a YouTube tutorial about Bluetooth 6.0 integration. She'd nodded, distracted, and waved him off. She had no idea what he was really installing. In the garage, under the guise of tinkering, Andrew mounted a voice-activated recorder inside the driver's side speaker grill. It was state-of-the-art, $350 from a shady electronics shop in Tacoma, with 4 days of audio on a loop. He'd hesitated not out of guilt, but because crossing this line meant no turning back. Then he thought of her signature on that receipt, and the hesitation vanished. He sealed the grill, tested the device, and waited. The payoff came Sunday night. Allison had left for another client emergency, this time to help a startup with their pitch deck. Andrew sat in his study, bourbon in hand, his Apple Watch tracking his heart rate for grim amusement. At 9:32 p.m., he retrieved the recorder. The first few minutes were mundane. Car door, engine, her humming to a Taylor Swift song. Then, a voicemail played on speaker, and Andrew's world tilted. The voice was male, smooth, overconfident. "Hey Ollie, it's me. Once we get Andrew out of the picture, we'll liquidate the LLC. I've got the split agreement drafted, house, accounts, the works. Your guy's too soft to fight." Allison's response was a purr, a tone Andrew hadn't heard since their early years, when they'd dance in the kitchen with the lights on. "He won't know what hit him," she said, her voice dripping with certainty. "The pension's already rerouted to your account. He's clueless." Andrew paused the recording. His heart rate, according to his watch, was a steady 68. No rage, no shock, just a cold, clinical clarity. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. His pension, his life's work, diced up and funneled to a man who laughed like he'd never been punched. Allison wasn't just cheating. She was harvesting him, piece by piece, while still asking him to buy her almond milk. He played the rest of the recording. More details emerged: fake vendor invoices, consulting fees wired to Wilson Ventures, and a plan to label charity fund transfers as outreach grants to dodge scrutiny. The charity angle hit hardest. Allison had spent years building her image as a philanthropist, hosting galas for a community fund that supported local families. Andrew had always admired her for it. Now he saw the truth. It was a front, a way to siphon money while smiling for the cameras. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he cross-referenced the recording's details with their joint accounts. It took hours, but he found it. A $50,000 transfer to Wilson Ventures, labeled Marketing Consultation, approved by Allison. The date matched a gala she'd hosted last month, one where she teared up on stage, promising every dollar would help struggling families. The lie was so bold it almost impressed him. By Monday, Andrew had a plan. He called Marcus again. "I need more," he said. "Deep dive. Bank records, property deeds, anything tied to Wilson Ventures or Nathan Wilson." Marcus whistled. "You're playing with fire, man." Andrew's voice was flat. "Then get me a flamethrower." While Marcus dug, Andrew turned to another ally, Tara, a former colleague who transitioned into cybersecurity after a stint at his firm. She was brilliant, discreet, and owed him for a recommendation that landed her a six-figure job. Over coffee at a quiet cafe in Fremont, he slid her a USB drive with the recording. "Can you verify this?" he asked. "And trace where the money's going?" Tara's eyes gleamed. "Give me 48 hours. As he drove home, Allison texted, "Running late tonight. Don't wait up." Andrew didn't reply. He parked in the garage, stared at her empty Lexus, and felt the weight of the recorder in his hand. The game was no longer about catching her. It was about outplaying her. Allison thought she was the architect of his ruin, but Andrew was already drafting a counter-design, one that would leave her with nothing but the ashes of her own ambition. Allison's lies were a house of cards, and Andrew Clayton was ready to pull the tablecloth. The recording from her Lexus played in his mind like a looped track. Her purr, Nathan's smug laugh, the casual dissection of his life. But Andrew wasn't breaking. He was building, crafting a plan so precise it would make an architect proud. By Tuesday, Andrew's study had become a war room. The desk was littered with printouts, bank statements, Marcus's photos, and Tara's preliminary report. Tara had worked fast, confirming the recording was authentic and tracing the $50,000 transfer to a nested account under Wilson Ventures. She'd also flagged a second transfer, $75,000, labeled event sponsorship, wired to the same shell company 2 weeks prior. Both were siphoned from the community fund Allison championed. Money meant for families in need. The audacity of it, cloaked in her teary gala speeches, fueled Andrew's resolve. This wasn't just personal. It was a betrayal of everyone she charmed. He needed more than evidence, though. He needed leverage, something to turn Allison's world upside down without leaving his fingerprints. Marcus's latest report provided the spark. Nathan Wilson wasn't just a divorce attorney. He was a player in Seattle's elite circles, with a trail of scorned ex-clients and a reputation for bending ethics. Marcus had dug up a lead. Nathan was brokering a deal to flip Summit Towers Unit 1704, the condo bought with Andrew's money, for a profit. The buyer? A tech mogul with a history of shady real estate deals. If Andrew could expose this, it would tie Nathan and Allison to a web of fraud. But exposure required timing. Andrew's first move was to amplify the stakes. He contacted Tara again, this time with a bolder request. "Can you mimic a voice?" he asked, sliding her a folder of Allison's old voicemails and podcast clips from her failed Mindset Matters venture. Tara grinned, her hacker instincts kicking in. "With this much material, I can make her order pizza or confess to a crime." Andrew didn't smile. "I need a message. From Nathan. Convincing enough to lure her somewhere public." Tara delivered in 36 hours. Using AI, she crafted a voicemail in Nathan's voice. Smooth, urgent, laced with his signature arrogance. "Ali, emergency meeting tonight, 8 p.m., Summit Towers parking garage. Bring the fund transfer docs and the watch. We're closing this deal. Don't tell anyone." Andrew listened to it 3 times, marveling at its precision. It was Nathan, down to the way he clipped his vowels. He spoofed a burner number labeled NW and sent the message to Allison's phone at 6:15 p.m. during dinner. The effect was immediate. Allison, mid-bite of her salmon, froze as her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her fork clattering to the plate. "Urgent revisions for a client," she stammered, already grabbing her purse. Andrew feigned concern. "Everything okay?" She waved him off, her smile tight. "Just work. I'll be back late." She left her plate untouched. A rare lapse for a woman who never skipped a meal. Andrew cleared the table, his jaw aching from a suppressed grin. She was walking into his trap. The second piece was riskier. Andrew had hired a photographer, not Marcus this time, but a freelancer named Lena, who specialized in discreet shots for corporate whistleblowers. Lena was expensive but worth it. Her lens could capture a lie from 100 yards. Andrew gave her strict instructions. Stake out the Summit Towers garage, focus on Allison, and shoot anything incriminating. He'd also tipped off a local blogger, a gossip hound named Riley Voss, who thrived on Seattle's elite scandals. Riley didn't know Andrew's name, only that an anonymous source had a tip about a marketing exec and a shady attorney. The bait was set. At 8:07 p.m., Lena's text came through. "She's here. Alone. Pacing." Andrew sat in his car, parked a block away, his binoculars trained on the garage entrance. Allison emerged, clutching a folder and the Patek Philippe box, her face a mix of nerves and defiance. She scanned the shadows, expecting Nathan, but the garage was empty, except for Lena's lens and Riley's crew, who'd arrived under the guise of investigative journalism. Riley's team didn't hesitate. Cameras flashed, questions flew. "Ms. Powers, is that a bribe? Are you involved with Wilson Ventures?" Allison's face drained of color. She stammered, clutching the watch box like a shield, then bolted to her car. By midnight, Riley's blog post was live. Marketing maven caught in scandal? The article was thin on facts but heavy on insinuation, with Lena's photos of Allison, wide-eyed, clutching the folder, splashed across the page. Social media picked it up, and by morning, Seattle's elite were whispering. Andrew didn't sleep. He monitored the fallout from his study, sipping coffee as comments piled up. Allison's phone buzzed incessantly, but she didn't answer. She was home by 1 a.m., her face a mask of fury and fear. "Some idiot blogger's slandering me," she snapped, pacing the kitchen. Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Sounds serious. Need help?" She glared, muttering about cyber harassment, and stormed upstairs. The trap had worked, but Andrew wasn't done. Tara's final report arrived at dawn. A digital paper trail linking Wilson Ventures to the community funds missing $125,000. The transfers were sloppy, signed by Allison under fake vendor names. Andrew forwarded the report to Marcus with a note. "Get this to the funds board." Anonymously, he also found a wild card, an old prenup, tucked in a safe from their 1999 wedding. Allison's father had insisted on it, citing her inheritance. Page 5, Clause 3. Infidelity triggered a $3 million penalty, payable to the wrong spouse. Andrew's lips twitched. The prenup was still binding. As Allison left for work, oblivious to the storm brewing, Andrew leaned back in his chair. The blogger's post was just the opening salvo. The real blow would come from the board, the prenup, and the truth about her charity fraud. Allison thought she was untouchable, but Andrew was rewriting the rules. She'd built her empire on lies. He'd tear it down with precision. The air in the Clayton house crackled with unspoken ruin. Allison's empire, built on charm and deceit, was crumbling, and Andrew Clayton watched it fall with the calm of a man who'd already moved on. Her frantic pacing, her phone buzzing like a trapped wasp, told him the trap had sprung. Now it was time to tighten the noose. By Wednesday morning, Riley Voss's blog post had spread like wildfire across Seattle's social circles. The photos of Allison in the Summit Tower's garage, clutching the $25,000 watch box, her face a mask of panic, were shared, retweeted, and dissected. Comments piled up. "Is this fraud? Who's Nathan Wilson? She's supposed to be a philanthropist." Allison's carefully curated image as a marketing genius and charity darling was unraveling, and she knew it. She stormed into the kitchen at 7 a.m., her hair uncharacteristically messy, her voice sharp. "This is a smear campaign, Andrew," she snapped, waving her phone. "Some jealous competitors trying to ruin me." Andrew sipped his coffee, his expression neutral. "Sounds like you've got it handled," he said, knowing she didn't. Behind the scenes, Andrew's plan was in overdrive. Marcus had delivered Tara's report. $125,000 siphoned from the community fund, tied to Wilson Ventures through fake invoices, to the fund's board via an anonymous drop. The board, led by CFO Vanessa Reed, wasn't the type to ignore red flags. Vanessa had a reputation for firing executives over misplaced commas. Forged financials were her personal apocalypse. Andrew had also sent a copy of the Lexus recording, stripped of metadata, to Vanessa's office with a note. "Listen before you decide." The audio was damning. Allison's purr, Nathan's smug plan to liquidate the LLC and reroute Andrew's pension. It was the kind of evidence that didn't just end careers, it ended legacies. At 10 a.m., Andrew's burner phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Board's meeting now." Vanessa's livid. Andrew didn't reply. He was already in his study, preparing the next move. The prenup from 1999, with its $3 million infidelity clause, was now scanned and notarized, ready to be presented if Allison tried to fight. But Andrew wasn't banking on the prenup alone. He'd found another weapon, a whistleblower thread on a local business forum, seeded by Tara under a pseudonym. The thread, titled Charity Fraud in Seattle, linked Allison's name to Wilson Ventures and included screenshots of the fake invoices. It was subtle, plausibly organic, and by noon, it had 200 replies, including one from a reporter at the Seattle Times. Allison's downfall accelerated that afternoon. She returned home at 2 p.m., an hour after Vanessa called an emergency board meeting. Her face was ashen, her usual poise replaced by a twitchy energy. "They're auditing me," she said, her voice low, almost to herself. "The board thinks I'm stealing." Andrew, pruning roses in the garden, glanced up. "That's rough. Any truth to it?" Her eyes narrowed, searching his face for a hint of accusation. But Andrew's expression was blank, practiced. "Of course not," she hissed, then retreated inside, her phone already to her ear, barking at her lawyer. The real blow came at 4 p.m. Vanessa emailed the board a summary of the audit's initial findings. Copied to Allison. Irregularities confirmed. $125,000 misallocated. Immediate suspension pending investigation. Andrew, who'd hacked into Allison's email with Tara's help. A simple phishing trick. Read the message before Allison did. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of victory settling in. Suspension was just the start. The board was circling, and the Seattle Times reporter had already requested an interview with Vanessa about alleged charity mismanagement. Nathan Wilson, meanwhile, was cracking under pressure. Marcus's latest report showed Nathan scrambling to distance himself from Allison. He'd canceled a meeting with the tech mogul buyer for Unit 1704, changed his phone number, and made his Instagram private after Riley's blog post mentioned him by name. Andrew saw an opportunity to widen the rift. Using Tara's AI, he crafted another fake message. This time a text from Allison to Nathan. "You set me up. I know you kept half the fund money. I'm telling the board everything." Sent from a spoofed number, it hit Nathan's phone at 6 p.m. Marcus, tailing Nathan, reported the fallout. Nathan, red-faced, screaming into his phone at a cafe, accusing Allison of betrayal. The snake was eating its own tail. By Thursday, the dominoes were falling. The Seattle Times published a front-page story. Local execs suspended amid charity fraud allegations. Allison's headshot, lifted from her company's website, stared out from every newsstand. The article cited credible evidence of misallocated funds and named Wilson Ventures as a potential front. Social media erupted, with hashtags like #CharityScam and #AllisonPowers trending locally. Allison locked herself in the guest room, her phone off, her confidence shattered. Andrew knocked softly, offering a glass of water. "You okay in there?" he called. Silence answered. The final twist came Friday morning. Andrew met with a lawyer, Elaine Harper, who specialized in prenups and asset recovery. Elaine reviewed the infidelity clause and the evidence, Marcus's photos, the recording, the blog post, and nodded. "You've got her dead to rights," she said. "File now, and she'll owe you $3 million, plus half the marital assets." Andrew filed the petition that afternoon, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. The house, still in his name from their early marriage, would revert to him. Allison, served papers at her office, had no defense. As the week ended, Allison's empire was rubble. The board fired her, the fund launched a federal inquiry, and Nathan vanished, rumored to be hiding in Portland. Allison moved to a hotel, her belongings in a single suitcase. Andrew stood in the foyer, the prenup in hand, and felt no triumph. Just the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Allison had played her hand, but Andrew had reshuffled the deck. The silence in the Clayton house was deafening, a tomb for Allison's shattered ambition. Andrew Clayton stood at the edge of his victory, not gloating, but grounded, like an architect surveying a finished structure. Allison's empire had collapsed, and he'd ensured every brick fell with purpose. It was a crisp Monday morning in Seattle, the kind where the air smelled of pine and possibility. Allison was gone, her hotel room a temporary refuge paid for with dwindling savings. The Bellevue mansion, now legally Andrew's thanks to the prenup's infidelity clause, felt too large, too quiet. He wandered its rooms, touching the surfaces she'd once curated, the marble counters, the designer lamps, knowing they'd never hold her shadow again. The Seattle Times headlines still lingered on his laptop screen. Exec fired amid fraud scandal. Allison's face, once a staple of glossy magazines, was now a cautionary tale. The fallout had been swift. The Community Funds Board, led by Vanessa Reed, had terminated Allison's contract unanimously after the audit confirmed $125,000 in misallocated funds. Federal investigators opened a case, their inquiries circling Wilson Ventures and its shell accounts. Social media was merciless. Hashtags like #CharityScam and #AllisonPowers trended for days, with memes mocking her gala speeches. Andrew didn't read the comments. He didn't need to. The world was doing his work for him. Nathan Wilson, the other architect of this betrayal, had fled. Marcus's last report placed him in Portland, living under an alias, his LinkedIn scrubbed, his condo listed for sale. The AI-crafted text Andrew sent, accusing Nathan of double-crossing Allison, had done its job. Nathan's paranoia had driven a wedge between them, and when Allison called him, desperate for answers, he'd blocked her number. Andrew imagined Nathan's smug grin fading as he realized he was alone. His empire of charm no match for Andrew's precision. But Andrew's victory wasn't about destruction. It was about restoration. On Tuesday, he met with Elaine Harper, his lawyer, to finalize the divorce. The prenup's $3 million penalty was airtight, backed by Marcus's photos, the Lexus recording, and Tara's financial trail. Allison's lawyer tried to negotiate, claiming coercion, but Elaine shut it down. "Your client stole from a charity and her husband," she said, her voice like steel. "Sign or we go to trial." Allison signed, her hand trembling, her eyes avoiding Andrew's. The house, the savings, and half their investments reverted to him. Allison walked away with her car and a fractured reputation. Andrew didn't keep it all. On Wednesday, he donated $500,000 to the community fund, earmarked for families Allison had defrauded. He attended their next gala, not as a guest but as a speaker. Standing at the podium, he didn't mention Allison. Instead, he spoke of trust, accountability, and second chances, his voice steady as the crowd applauded. The Seattle Times covered it, "Retired architect restores faith in local charity." For the first time in months, Andrew felt light, unburdened by the weight of her lies. Allison's punishment was quieter but no less final. The federal inquiry led to charges: wire fraud and embezzlement. She avoided prison, striking a plea for 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. Andrew heard she was working at a nonprofit in Tacoma, answering phones, her designer heels traded for flats. She tried to call him once, a week after the divorce, her voice small on his voicemail. "Andrew, please. I know I messed up. Can we talk?" He deleted it without responding. Some bridges once burned stayed ash. He wasn't heartless, though. Late one night, alone in his study, Andrew pulled out a photo from their early years, Allison laughing at their wedding, her eyes bright with a love he'd thought was real. For a moment, he wondered where it went wrong. Had he been too trusting? Too distant? The questions stung, but they didn't linger. He tucked the photo away, choosing truth over nostalgia. Allison had made her choices. He'd made his. By spring, Andrew had sold the mansion. It was too big for one man, too full of echoes. He bought a cottage on Whidbey Island, a modest place with a view of the Puget Sound. There, surrounded by cedar trees and the hum of waves, he started writing a memoir, Blueprints of Betrayal. It wasn't about revenge. It was about resilience, about rebuilding when the ground beneath you shifts. Publishers were already circling, drawn to his story of quiet triumph. One evening, as he sat on his porch, a glass of bourbon in hand, his phone buzzed. A text from Tara. "You see the news? Allison's nonprofit just got audited. She's out again." Andrew didn't reply. He didn't need to. Justice, he'd learned, wasn't loud. It didn't need hashtags or headlines. It was the slow, steady drip of consequences, catching up to those who thought they could outrun it. He looked out at the water, the horizon glowing under a fading sun. Allison had called him soft, Clueless. A man too weak to fight. She'd been wrong. Andrew wasn't weak. He was deliberate. A man who built with care and dismantled with precision. As the waves lapped against the shore, he raised his glass, not to her downfall, but to his own beginning. To truth, he whispered, and drank deeply.